So welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, second time around. It's absolutely fascinating the first time around. So I'm just literally going to start off with, how did you start off? Interesting story in the family business and where that took you to where you are today. So yeah, can you go through that with us?
I guess the family business, so my father was making wine at the time in the Yarra Valley and also importing French oak wine barrels and selling those to a lot of the large wineries in Australia. And also had a passion for wine. So my brother and I grew up sort of with child labour on the vineyard picking grapes. And
all from the age of 7? No?
And all the things, I didn't say that, you said that. And all the things that in a family business, you've just got to fill the gaps because they need to be done. It's not, can you do it? Or it's not about trying, it's just about getting it done. And so that gave me an understanding of one, how to run business and also understand the landscape of wine in Australia. And so that, I actually went and studied entrepreneurship over in the States. And I mean, when you study entrepreneurship, you sort of need to have a context to apply it to and have a bit of an understanding of an industry that you're wanting to start a business in. And so I came back from Boston and started, I was actually at the Laneway Music Festival, and they wouldn't serve me a glass of wine. And I asked them why, and they said, oh, look, wine can't be served outdoors because of the glass, and we're always, beer and spirits come in a single serve, but wine, we have to pour it, it's such a pest, so you can't have one, you can have beer or you can have spirits. And so being that 23-year-old uni student is like, well, clearly I need to solve this really big human problem. And so started a business that made a single serve glass of wine. So I went home from that music festival and got a plastic wine glass and poured wine into it and got my housemate's iron and ironed on some foil onto the top and ruined the iron, but it wasn't mine, so it was fine. But that was my prototype. And so then I went and raised money and built a manufacturing line and had a big manufacturing plant here in Melbourne, but our markets were all overseas. So. And right the way through that, I was still sort of straddling the family business, and my brother and father were in my business as well. So everything all the lines were blurred.
And how did you get clarity on those lines? So when was the point where you just went down your route? Are they still involved today, or how's?
Well, I sold the company in early 2016 because it grew very quickly over those 6 years, and sort of turned into a bit of a very different company to the company my father has now. And because I had studied entrepreneurship, it was all about exits and all these things.
Having the plan?
Yeah, well, having a business plan. I actually wrote a business plan. And so it was about, and I mean, we had grown to the point where we had offices in Japan and Korea, Taiwan, and China, and we sort of, I needed to probably inject a whole heap more working capital into the business, like a good sort of additional, like a good $30 million, which I would have had to go to the market for. So it was whether I wanted to stay in that business or sell it. And I just had an offer out of the blue from Europe for the business who wanted the airlines and the hotel minibars that we served in China. So I ended up taking that offer. And it was an exhausting business. I had no idea what I was getting into, and neither did Dad. And it was really interesting hearing Penny speak before about that it's a really nice environment to grow and learn and have that transparency. And you haven't got sort of your traditional management structure where there are secrets and other people's careers that are more of a priority. It's about getting the job done in the most efficient way. That's also the healthiest way, and so I completely forgot what I was about to say then. I've gone down a path of I really enjoyed Penny's talk, but no, it's gone again. It'll come back.
That's cool. We're talking about blurred lines, but in the moment, obviously, you chose to sell, but
there weren't lines. It was sort of. I'd really taken a business into another direction. And so while we had Dad's really good being hands-on with things, so he loved the manufacturing side and the production side. We bought a lot of wine, so those sort of big petrol tankers you see on the road, we had sort of 40 of those setting up to the factory a day full of wine. And so he would sort of come in there. My brother, who's now a sommelier for Heston Blumenthal and a few people over in London, who he would sort of come in and be the wine quality person. So everyone would just sort of play to their strengths, and then if they had to, play to their weaknesses, because we needed to fill some gaps. But I think that's the thing with family business. It's that there are no lines. It's emotionally, you need to do it.
And some of your strengths then, forming partnerships was a big one for you, and obviously you talk about overseas and the manufacturing process and resourcing, those type of things. Can you shed a little bit of light around kind of your skill set there and what was important to your business at that time?
Yeah, I mean, when you're an entrepreneur, you sort of need to be on the forward-facing element of whatever it is that next growth phase is. And so for me, I had this manufacturing line that was just belting out wine glasses, and at that point we were serving to all the AFL, all the stadiums and the festivals and things. And then I thought, I need to go and find a market for this wine that's being served, that's pumping out of the factory. So I had to go overseas very quickly. And my brother is probably a more detailed, well thought out person, where I'm sort of like forward runner, just like I'll try things, and some will work and some won't. I won't be phased by that. So the marketing and the sales and how we positioned ourselves in Asia was a really important thing. And I did spend a little bit of time studying in Beijing, so I sort of understood where wine slotted into the sort of luxury mentality in Asia, and that was relatively new, and sort of a Western culture that was moving in there. So that was a really critical area of the business that I was really happy in. What was just so difficult for me to do was, so we launched in Japan, and the Japanese are very particular. Everything needs to be perfect. We had this she'll be right attitude that didn't go down so well over there. Okay. So things that if a label was like a millimetre out, it was like the whole container was a no.
Understanding those cultural aspects to your market, right?
Yeah, and so I had to come back, and this was sort of filling the gaps and get our quality control from here to up here, and so it's a startup, and so we were contract packaging for listed wine companies, and they were fine with it, but our Japanese customers were not. We needed to change things, and they were getting on a plane and coming to inspect things. So I was like, all right.
Easier not to be in Japan then.
No, it was my biggest market and my favourite market. And when you get in there, it's very hard work, and they make you work. But once you're there, it's fantastic. And you've got these great relationships that are ongoing. But it just takes a little while to get there. And Australians are a little bit more casual, where they're very formal. And so I've had lots of learning, and generally when I learn the hard way. So so I had to go into the detail on the factory and do all the reporting and that stuff. I'm awful at, which I had to do.
Yeah. You talk about the hard way. What was your biggest fall?
Oh, well, I mean, how long have we got today? The biggest fall.
Only faux pas, yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I probably didn't learn fast enough with the Japanese. We were growing so quickly, and there were things. It was almost like when you've got a high growth business, you're operating with a series of yellow flags, and you attend to the reds rather than green and then yellow, and then you're all organised. You've got months of warning of when something is going to happen, where instead and this is just probably also because of my age and the way I was running the business, but series of yellow, and then the red would come up, and then it's like oh shit, we've got a big customer that's potentially going to walk away. So I'm going to fly back from wherever I am in China back to the production line and sort out the problem. So, yeah.
That's a big one then.
It would be the biggest one. It just depends whether you want to have a financial number to it as well, because they made lots of expensive mistakes. What would be the biggest one? There are some good ones. I mean, a very expensive mistake was I raised some capital very early on off a business plan. And I didn't know, although I was pitching the business and I had my vision of where the company was going to go, and I didn't realise that they were actually wanting to put money into the business to be a supplier to the business. And I wasn't able to look at it holistically. I wasn't able to get up in the helicopter and really understand why they were interested in the business, because what was being communicated to me is that they really liked the innovation and the potential IP and all the expansion, but they actually didn't have the grand plans and the high growth, we're going to exit this and make it really big, intentions that I did. And so that was really painful. So I outgrew that supplier within sort of 8 months, and to be honest, the quality was of the production that they had was I mean, there's many nights that I didn't sleep, actually most of them, and so I ended up having to buy them out at a really expensive price, because I didn't really think about how this relationship was going to evolve as the business grew. Yeah.
So at that age then, and you maybe not seeking the guidance or maybe not knowing where to source that really, or as a sounding board to get some advice, was that a catalyst for you, once you'd sold that, to go into Startup Vic and obviously provide that type of service for other people?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I had always been, although I had my family, it was a bit of a different business. So Dad was really good with the wine side and the production, but the stuff that I was expanding and the IP and things, was quite different and out of his wheelhouse. So I was spending a lot of time in the startup community. So I had great mentors. The thing about startups is everyone shares. And so you ask an entrepreneur, what did you do in this situation? Or can I have a coffee? I've got a problem. And they'll say, yep. And they'll just give you a complete download of how they solved a situation that was similar in trying to help you. So being CEO at Startup Victoria was a chance for me to give back and also have a bit of a holiday, because I mean, I lived on a plane for many years, and I was really starting to get my health down a little bit. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease during it, and so Crohn's disease and stress and aeroplane food, just bad combo. And so so it's this like running this fabulous nonprofits that's at the nucleus of our like high growth startup ecosystem was just fantastic. And so I could totally put all the things in place that I wanted to see as an entrepreneur. But now it's just going gangbusters. You know, now that the government's actually interested in entrepreneurship, where when I had to go to the States to study entrepreneurship because it was a dirty word here in 2008 or whatever it was. So
you heavily invested in yourself at those times. What is it you see that entrepreneurs should be investing in themselves these days? What would you recommend?
As in how to invest in themselves?
Yeah, how to invest in themselves. What's the key advice you could give today's entrepreneurs?
Oh, I mean, it's about your learning curve and how quickly you can do that, and how data-driven you can be. How the fine art of an entrepreneur is waking up every day and challenging your biases, so that there's your vision and they're your personal and life dreams, and then there's like hard data points on whether it's a red flag, a yellow flag, or a green flag in market, or whatever you're trying to do, whether it's with your staff, with your product or your service. And so being able to really, really grow and move past that was critical. And when I learned how to do that, then I saw really big changes in my business, because there's on one side, an entrepreneur can stubbornly hold a vision, and it's sort of this make or break for the business and the staff, and also it's a really harsh way to run a business. Or you can be data-led, and I mean that's with tech companies, everything's data-led, and you run it. You've got a hypothesis for that day or that week, and then you've got your series of tests that you're going to throw out to market. And I mean that's what I love about tech companies, where my iteration, I would I'd make certain changes on wine labels and then put them on a boat, send them to Japan, and that
feedback
was like,
loop's a long one, right?
That was like a 3-month loop where I'm like now ideally having it on a daily sort of download. But it's definitely, I would say definitely your learning and your ability to take in feedback, be coachable, mentorable, all those sort of things, because there's lots of people that are much smarter than you, and you can't know everything. What you're good at is just getting things done, and no one can quite see your vision like you do. And you're the one that's going to execute that. So you want to sort of take from lots of different areas, and surrounding yourself with the right people.
Awesome. And then, obviously, you're playing in the VC space. Obviously, you've raised money before. Was that something that at the time when you were doing that, you thought, okay, well, in the future, that's what I want to be involved in as well, or was it a second thought?
No, that is a definite no. And I'm not playing in the VC space. I have invested recently in a data machine learning sort of thing that isn't launched yet. So I can't really say too much about it or what it's going to exactly look like. I'm really interested in that space, and it's this year I've been hanging out with some larger corporates that, although they've got lots and lots of data, you really do need a commercial lens to ask certain questions of it and then have it learn. And so what I've found in a lot of big corporates is that the learning isn't there, and although they've got piles of data, there's not much being done. So I'm
it's down the line,
playing in that space.
And then also about your roles now and how you've changed and evolved as a person for what you're doing now after Startup Vic. You're now with the investment group. So can you talk about that a little bit for us?
What corporate venturing Australia actually is, it's not investment, it is sort of like Startup Vic, but for corporate. So I've been playing in this corporate innovation space this year, and I thought I can go and run ventures within big corporates, because you've got a business that's really successful now, but what does Horizon 2 and 3 look like? And so what I was looking at in the startup community, you've got businesses that can go in and shake up a business model or claw customers so quickly that corporate doesn't even know what to do. And so it's a legitimate threat. And when a stock on the market is valued, disruption, the likelihood of disruption is part of that valuation, but it doesn't have a number, and which is totally bizarre to me, because disruption does have a number, and depending on whether you're in insurance or property or marketplaces, whatever it is, it absolutely does have a number. So anyway, I've been playing in that space, and I thought, right, I'm going to go do venturing and be an entrepreneur within a corporate. And what I realised is the whole mentality of moving quickly, challenging your biases, and being able to leverage the larger group and taking on risk, all these things are completely opposite to why you would go and work at a corporate. So the people that are attracted to that space there's no upside to trying something and getting it wrong and then potentially getting fired. So this notion of venturing is a very challenging one. So a corporate's got two options: they build something or they buy something. And so if you buy something, you need to sew it into the organisation in order for it to be properly effective, which is a really hard thing to do. Or you build it, and then you need to attract the right talent in there. So Corporate Venturing Australia is all of the chief information and innovation officers. At the moment, they're not functioning like the startup community does, where they're sharing and saying, hey, we did this at a hackathon and this was the result, what did you do? Instead, it's very corporate and closed, and I'm seeing everyone, these leaders, reinvent the wheel internally within their organisations. So yeah, CVA is about bringing that community together.
Is there any sides to be taken here? So like you've got the startup kind of ecosystem, those people are like, true die-hard startups, and it's like they see you moving into the corporate space, and obviously those people are trying to disrupt that space. Is there any kind of, is there any murmurings from the startup community saying what you're doing that for, or is it kind of full encouragement?
Well, no one said anything to my face, but I welcome any feedback. The way I see it, though, is they're going to be investors into the startup community. So we have lots of complaints about there's not enough investment in Australia, there's only a handful of VCs and a small amount of business angels, and as a whole, culturally, we're not investing in entrepreneurship. I see corporates as not having a choice but to invest in our startup community. And so what they're going to do is they're going to build something, say they're going to build a fintech product, and they'll build an MVP, they'll take it to market. They might utilize a little bit of data internally, but generally people are like, no, this is my area of the business. I've got no KPIs that say I have to make you successful, so no, I'm going to almost sabotage yours. And so they'll build something, and then they'll within the startup community they'll realize, that company's been was at this stage 3 years ago, and they've got market share, and they've got a really good team, and they're doing all sorts of things, and they move really quickly. Why don't we just buy them and bring the team in? Or we leave them out there, we'll take a minority share, we'll fund them and keep them doing what they're doing. So I see that what I was trying to do at Startup Vic is really sew in corporate in a healthy way, not just here's some money for sponsorship, it's here's some...
leveraging skills, resources.
Yeah, and properly collaborating. So corporate venturing Australia, I see, is that trying to sew in the startup community into the innovation community within corporates. I think it's really important for the future of our economy in Australia that they're looking to the startup community for the Horizon 2, Horizon 3 stuff that they need to be doing with their business.
Awesome. What does the future hold for you personally? Do you see yourself, 5-10 years down the track? What's the overall grand vision for Georgia Beattie?
I don't know. I know what I'm doing tonight. I've got a bit of an idea what I'm doing tomorrow and Friday.
Test tomorrow,
I'm doing an ergo in the morning. Yep. No wines for me tonight. To be honest, I wouldn't have said that I'd be in the spot that I am, even at the start of the year. And I'm really good at learning something and then leaning in and creating something in that space. I'm quite creative when it comes to business, and I'm good at executing. So I'm interested in this space. I'm not 100% sold on corporate innovation, and I'm still I'm looking for the data points. I hear growth stories and innovation theatre in lots of market updates, quarterly updates. I see innovation wedged into lots of titles in corporates, and I hear them talking about this, it's really important. They've got hack days and they've got incubators and accelerators, but is there a genuine return on investment, intention? And so I'm just looking at this space. There's definitely a lot of chief information and chief innovation officers that have been invested in and have budget to do something. So that's what I'm doing at the moment. I will always be playing in startups. I always have a few things on the go, and they're like my lottery tickets. And then I've got my career, which I should probably start taking more seriously and do a more formal role rather than just street fighting and hustling. But yeah, I'm never going to be able to answer that question.
Okay. And street fighting and hustling. Yeah. Would you put that down to one of your key traits to getting you to where you are today? And when you looked at that family business and to now?
Definitely. There's a big difference between sitting back and saying and having an idea and saying, oh, that was my idea, someone's done that. Business is about getting out there and getting it done. And so, absolutely hustle and the street fighting part it's sort of a bad, I use that in a very casual way that's probably not appropriate here. But that's more about being savvy in business. You've got to have your wits about you with business partners. I learned that the hard way. With the deals that you do, not over.
That's for the Q&A then, the business partner one afterwards.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's really important to have a fitness in business, and I refer to that as street fighting.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Georgia Beattie, Corporate Venture Australia. Round of applause for Georgia, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Awesome.